Britain and other NATO allies began evacuating their citizens from Afghanistan Sunday, along with hundreds of Afghan citizens who worked alongside them. NATO allies joined the US-led invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. NATO took control of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan 2 years later. In addition to American losses, hundreds of NATO troops have been killed in 2 decades of conflict. In a press conference Tuesday, NATO's Secretary-General blamed Afghanistan's political leadership for the capitulation to the Taliban.
Ultimately, the Afghan political leadership failed to stand up to the Taliban and to achieve the peaceful solution that Afghans desperately wanted.
The failure to achieve that solution could have wider implications for NATO, says analyst Natasha Lindstaedt.
I think NATO might return to more limited aims of just trying to maintain stability and deter rather than to engage in these grand interventions.
Britain's Defence Secretary blamed the collapse of the Afghan government on the 2020 deal struck with the Taliban by former US President Donald Trump.
It was done directly to the Taliban. It didn't involve the Afghan government, so fatally potentially undermined the government of that day. We as international partners found it uncomfortable because we had deployed through a US framework. We hadn't deployed in a unilateral manner. So when they pulled that framework, that we had to leave.
But many have also criticised the manner of the US withdrawal.
It was very abrupt and it wasn't coordinated, and there wasn't much consultation at all with from Biden and his administration with its NATO allies.
French President Emmanuel Macron warns the collapse of the Afghan government would have major consequences for the entire international community.
Terrorist groups are present in Afghanistan and seek to profit from the destabilization.
That threat extends beyond the region and has implications for the global fight against terrorism, say analysts.
I think there's going to be an undoubted sense of wind of victory blowing through the sails of jihadists around the world as they say, look, victory is attainable. This isn't a hopeless struggle. Keep to the fight, stick to your beliefs, and 20 years later, you can end up winning this war. And I think that narrative will carry them forwards for some time into the future.
European leaders have also warned of a new influx of Afghan refugees. Several thousand Afghan asylum seekers remain stranded on the Greek island of Lesbos. They staged a protest Monday against the Taliban takeover.
What will happen now in Afghanistan for young generation, for children, for women's rights, for everything? Everything are destroyed by Taliban.
Questions that remain unanswered as Western nations rush to leave and the Taliban retakes the reins of power in Afghanistan. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.